Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain. طيب يا إخوان, the greatest right, the deen of Islam basically, is a deen of rights. And we kind of learned that a little bit in the last segment. And the greatest of all the rights of Islam is the right of Allah to at-Tawheed. And at-Tawheed basically means that we confess that Allah is one, without partner or peer in His Lordship, His Rububiyyah, and unique, having no similitude, nothing which resembles Him in terms of His names and attributes, and one without rival in His right to be worshipped, His uluhiyyah. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. Worship Allah alone and do not associate any partners with Him in His worship. And He says in the other ayah, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّهُ. And your Lord has decreed that you worship none besides Him. And the hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, he said, حَقُّ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْعِبَادِ أَن يَعْبُدُوهُ وَلَا يُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. The right of Allah upon His slaves is that they worship Him alone and associate no partners with Him in their worship. So this is the greatest right, there's no question. This is the right which man has been created to fulfill. The whole reason why we're here is to fulfill this right. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I've not created man or jinn except to worship me. But after this right, after the right of Allah to at-Tawheed, there is no right which is greater. No right which is more important. No right which is more essential. No right which we need to be more concerned about fulfilling than the right of the parents. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after He mentioned His right, immediately after that, He mentioned the right of the parents. As He said, وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Worship Allah alone and do not associate any partners with Allah in His worship, and be kind and dutiful to your parents. So after He mentioned His right, immediately He followed it with the right of the parents. And He says, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And your Lord has decreed that you worship none besides Him, and that you give due respect, honor, and obedience to your parents. So last segment we talked about the rights of the spouses. In this segment we want to talk about the rights of the parents. And this is something that no one can consider unapplicable to him, because all of us have parents. All of us are the children of someone. And doesn't matter, we shouldn't think that this is a subject only for small children, although the small children should hear it. And that's important, ya ikhwan. We see some children outside, and they should come, they should hear this. They need to know the rights that their parents have upon them. We should never think that Islamic education is for the old people, for the people who are in their middle ages, 40 and so on. Nah. The young people, they're the future of Islam, and they need to know about Islam more than we do. Most of us are set in our ways and we're not going to change. No matter how many lectures we listen to, we're not going to change. But the young people, they're the future of Islam. They're the ones who are like clay before it's put in the oven. If you have clay before it's put in the oven, you can do anything with it. Is that true? You can shape it anyway. You can make it an ashtray. You can make it a vase. You can do so many things with it. But once you put it in the oven, can you change it? Nah, unless you break it. So these are the ones that we need to have in the lecture hall, the ones we need to have listening. The youth, especially this lecture. But although this lecture primarily is related to them, doesn't mean that now if you're 40, it's not applicable. Why? Because even the 40-year-old has to respect and honor and be kind and dutiful to his parents. So now when we talk about the parents, ya ikhwan, both of the parents, they have a very high status and they deserve the utmost respect. But if we were to say that one of them is entitled to more respect, more compassion, more honor, more admiration, more appreciation, more veneration, which one would it be? It would be the mother. As the Prophet ﷺ, or Abu Hurairah, he narrated in the hadith collected by Bukhari and Muslim, أن رجلا جاء إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال يا رسول الله من أحق الناس بحسن صحابتي. He said, O Messenger of Allah, who amongst all the people has the most right to my good companionship? So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, أمك. قال ثم من قال ثم أمك قال ثم من قال ثم أمك قال ثم من قال ثم أبوك. He said, a man came to the Messenger of Allah, asked him who of all people has the most right to my good companionship. He said, your mother. The man said, then after that, who? He said, then after that, your mother. He said, then after that, who? He said, then after that, your mother. He mentioned the mother 3 times. He said, then after that, then your father. And this doesn't mean that the father doesn't have a high status. He can be ignored. He can be mistreated. No. It just is the Prophet emphasizing what? The right of the mother. It's just min bab at-ta'keed ala haqq al-umm. And this is because the mothers are the ones who did what? They carried us. And they endured a great deal of pain and suffering while doing so. And then after they gave birth, they spent many sleepless nights caring for us, worrying about us, and sacrificing their own comfort to make us comfortable. As Allah says, وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ إِحْسَانًا حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ كُرْهًا وَوَضَعَتْهُ كُرْهًا وَحَمْلُهُ وَفِصَالُهُ 30 شَهْرًا. And we have enjoined upon man the kind and good treatment of his parents. His mother suffered whilst carrying him, and suffered whilst giving birth to him. And his carrying and his weaning combined lasted 30 months. 30 months of what? Of suffrage. And then it didn't stop there. It continued even after that. But 30 months of what? Of burden and difficulty and tab. And so it's for this reason that the parents in general, the mother and the father, and the mothers in particular, have to be honored, have to be treated kindly, and they have to constantly be thanked by their sons and daughters. As Allah says, Anishkur li wali walidayk. I'm sorry, Anishkur li wali walidayk. That you give thanks to me and to your parents. Ibn Abbas, he was making tafsir of this ayah. And he said basically there are 3 sets of ayat which came as couples. There are 3 verses that came as couples, and 2 partners basically. And neither one of these 2 partners will be accepted without the other. That there are 3 verses in the Quran where Allah mentioned 2 commands together. They're like partners, they're like a couple, and they go hand in hand, part and parcel. If a person does one of them and doesn't do the other, it won't be, neither one of them will be accepted. He said the first one is the statement of Allah, أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول. فقال فمن أطاع الله ولم يطيع الرسول لم يقبل منه. He said the first one is the statement of Allah, obey Allah and obey the messenger. He says, so whoever obeys Allah, but he doesn't obey the messenger, it won't be accepted. His obedience of Allah will not be accepted. He said the second one is وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ. Establish the prayer and pay as zakah. Then he said, فَمَنْ صَلَّى وَلَمْ يُزَكِّي لَمْ يُقْبَلْ مِنْهُ. He said, so whoever prayed and didn't give his zakat, then his prayer will not be accepted. Then he said the last one, الثالثة, أنشكر لي ولوالديك. That you give thanks to me and to your parents. He said, فَمَنْ شَكَرَ اللَّهَ وَلَمْ يَشْكُرْ لِوَالِدَيْهِ لَمْ يُقْبَلْ مِنْهُ. He said, so whoever thanked Allah, but he didn't appreciate and thank his parents, his thanks to Allah will not be accepted. So if we want our thanks to Allah to be accepted, we have to make sure we also do what? We thank our parents. And this honoring, respecting, kind treatment, thanking and being humble to our parents, obedient to them, submissive to them, is not something specific to children. People think when you say, okay, when you talk about birrul walidain, being good, dutiful, respectful to your parents, they say this is a lecture for al-awlad. This is a lecture for al-banin. This is a lecture for what? The youth, the young people. But this is a lecture for what? Al-kibar was-sigar. It's a lecture for the old and the young. And we know this because Abu Hurairah, when he mentioned the hadith, he said, أَنَّ رَجُلًا جَاء. He said, a man came, a full-grown man came. And he asked, O Messenger of Allah, who has the most right to my good companionship? And he said to this full-grown man, Ummuk, 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 3 times. Your mother, your mother, your mother. We also have the famous athar, the famous narration about Ibn Umar. That once, أنه رأى رجلا يحمل أمه على عاتقيه أو على رقبته ويطوف بها حول الكعبة فقال الرجل يا ابن عمر أتراني جازيتها؟ قال لا والله ولو بطلقة واحدة من طلقاتها ولكن أحسنت والله يثيبك على القليل كثيرا. Ibn Umar, he saw this man carrying his mother on his shoulders and making tawaf with her around the Kaaba. Carrying his mother on his shoulders and making tawaf because she couldn't walk, so he's making tawaf. So Ibn Umar, he saw this and he said, or the man said, Oh Ibn Umar, do you consider me after doing this that I have shown my appreciation, I have reimbursed her, I've repaid her, I've compensated her for all that she did, for all her pain and suffering? Have I repaid my debt to her? Ibn Umar, he said, La wallah. He said, no, by Allah. You haven't even repaid her for one contraction from the contractions that she had when she gave birth to you. One contraction. But you have done well, and Allah is going to reward you for this small thing. He called it a small thing. Allah is going to give you a big reward for the small thing that you are doing. طيب. So now, having said that, I want to mention, as we said, that the parents, they have rights. And it's important for us to know what these rights are so that we can fulfill the rights of the parents. And I want to mention, before I mention that these rights are even applicable to the non-Muslim parents. So we may have some people who converted to Islam and their parents are not Muslim. They might turn their mind off, turn their ears off. This doesn't apply to me because my parents are not Muslim. Not even the non-Muslim parents. Allah says, وَإِن جَاهَدَكَ عَلَىٰ أَن تُشْرِكَ بِي مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا وَصَاحِبَهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. He says, and if your parents who are non-Muslim, they try to what? They strive in earnest to make you associate partners with me, to commit shirk, of which you have no knowledge, then do not obey them. But still do what? Accompany them in this world, treat them kindly in this world, obey them in this world in the way which is what? Which is known to be acceptable to all. So what are these rights? Basically, we can summarize the rights of the parents into 4 rights. The first one is al-ihsan ilayhima. That basically, we have to honor them, treat them kindly and respectfully. This is the first one. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And your Lord has decreed that you worship none but Him, and that you are kind, dutiful, you honor and respect your parents. Then if you notice in Arabic, He said, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And He didn't mention the ma'mul. He didn't mention, okay, how do you make ihsan? Fil af'al, fil aqwal, do you do it in words? Do you do it in deeds? He didn't say. He left that unmentioned. And this in Arabic is done li'ifadat al-umum, to indicate what? Generality. So everything that is considered ihsan, doing good, respecting them, honor them, you're supposed to do that, O Muslim. Not something, one thing specific, but what? Everything that can fall into this category, you're supposed to do it. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He didn't stop there. He even prohibited the Muslim from doing the least amount of isa'ah. He prohibited him, not just did He command him to do good, but He prohibited him from doing the least amount of bad. In order to what? Min bab ta'keed ala wujub al-ihsan. In order to emphasize that it's required for him to do good and be kind to them. So He prohibited him from doing the least amount of unkindness, giving the least amount of disrespect, to emphasize that he has to be what? Ultimately and totally respectful. So He said, إما يبلغن عندك الكبر أحدهما أو كلاهما فلا تقل لهما أف. He says, and if one of them were to grow old or both of them were to grow old in your lifetime, then don't even say to them what? Uff, which is a word you use to basically express your frustration. Maybe they're telling you, do this, do this, do this, do this. Not giving you a chance. On your back. So you get fed up, you get annoyed, so you just say what? Oof, to express your frustration. Allah says you can't even do that. So if you can't do that, that little amount of disrespect, it shows you how much what? You're obligated to respect your parents. Even the smallest amount of disrespect you're not allowed to do. So the first thing is we have to be respectful, treat them kind, honor them, submit to them. The next one, or the next right, is al-infaq al-walidain. Maintaining them and providing for them if they need us to do so. So if a person's parents were poor, or they were in need, then it would be obligatory on the child to do what? To spend on them, to provide for him like he provides for his own children. And the proof of this is the hadith collected by Abu Dawood, wa Nasa'i, wa Ibn Majah, on the authority of Aisha, that a woman came to her and she said, "Fi hijri yatimun, afa akulu min malihi." She said, I have an orphan child. I have a child whose father died, and he's in my care and custody. I'm his sole provider. Can I feed myself? Can I provide for myself from his wealth? Meaning his father left him some money. I have nothing, and I can't survive. Can I make use of the money that he has? So Aisha, she said, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن من أطيب ما أكل الرجل من كسبه وولده من كسبه. He said the best and the purest and the finest of what a man eats is when he eats from his earnings, and his child is from his earnings. And another narration, another riwayah, the Prophet went on to say, فَكُلُوا مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ. So, O parents of these children, feel free to do what? To take your share of their what? Of their wealth. And Ibn al-Mundhir, one of the great scholars of Islam, حكى الإجماع, he narrated the consensus of the scholars, that if a parent or parents are in need, if they are poor and needy, it becomes wajib, it becomes obligatory upon their children to do what? To take care of them and look after them and spend on them like they spend on their own children. طيب, ثم بعد ذلك, the third right is طاعة الوالدين, obeying them. Even if you're 40 years old, you go and visit your mother, and she says, take out the trash. You say, take out the trash? I'm a grown man, I don't have to take out the trash. La. She says, take out the trash. You run to take out the trash. You don't waste a second. Because your mother and your father, even when you're 60, 70 years old, they have the right to command you, and you have to obey them. You have to obey them. And that's from al-ihsan. That's from al-ihsan that Allah mentioned when He said, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. The last right is a duaa lil-walidain, is praying for them, making dua for them. This is a right that they have upon their children, that we make what? that we pray for them, whether they're alive or if they've already passed away. As Allah says in the ayah that we mentioned earlier, وَاغْفِضْ لَهُمَا جَنَاحَ الذُّلِّ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ وَقُلْ رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. Allah gives us advice about how to be kind and dutiful to our parents, and He says, and lower your wing, the wing of humility, to your parents, and pray for them, saying, Oh Allah, have mercy upon them as they raised me when I was small. We also have the Anbiya, who are our qudwa. They are our example and role model, that they used to make it a point to make du'a for their parents. And we have the du'a of Nuh, where he said, Rabbi ghfirli wali walidayya. And there's a similar prayer in the Quran from Ibrahim, that they prayed, Oh Allah, forgive me and forgive my parents. And the Prophet Ashara, the Prophet alluded to this in the famous hadith of Abi Hurairah, in which he said, إِذَا مَاتَ إِبْنُ آدَمَ إِنْقَطَعَ عَمَلُهُ إِلَّا مِنْ ثَلَاثٍ. When the son of Adam dies, all of his deeds will come to an end, except three. And he mentioned from amongst them, وَوَلَدٌ صَالِحٌ يَدْعُو لَهُ, and a righteous child who prays for him. So the duty of the child is to what? Is to pray. Ask Allah for His forgiveness. Ask Allah for his good health. Ask Allah to make his affairs easy. A person, a Muslim, should make it a point that when he mentions himself, he mentions his parents. When he asks forgiveness for himself, he asks forgiveness for his parents. So these are the four main rights that the parents are entitled to from their children. And before concluding the session and giving an opportunity for questions, I wanted to read to you or share with you kalaman nafisan, some very beautiful words which were recorded by Imam Al-Dhahabi rahimahullah ta'ala, in which he cautions the Muslims against uquq al-walidain, which is the opposite of bir al-walidain. Mistreating their parents, abusing them, not obeying them, disobeying them, disrespecting them. He cautions against this, he warns against this, and he warns against it in a very powerful and moving way. So I wanted to share it with you, and then after that we'll give an opportunity for questions. He said, Al-Dhahabi, أيها المضيع لآكة الحقوق المعتاض من بر الوالدين العقوق الناس لما يجب عليه الغافل عما بين يديه بر الوالدين عليك دين وأنت تتعاطاه باتباع الشين تطلب الجنة بزعمك وهي تحت أقدام أمك. O you neglector of the greatest of obligations, you have traded the honor due your parents for disrespect and disobedience. You have neglected your duty and you are heedless of the punishment that awaits you for your negligence. Respecting and honoring your parents is a debt that you owe to them, but you prefer to disgrace and dishonor them. You claim to seek paradise while it is right there lying beneath your mother's feet. حملتك في بطنها 9 أشهر كأنها 9 حجج وكابدت عند الوضع ما يذيب المهج وأرضعتك من ثديها لبنا وطارت لأجلك وسنا وغسلت بيمينها عنك الأذى وآثرتك على نفسها بالغذاء وصيرت هجرها لك مهدا وأنالتك إحسانا ورفدا. She carried you in her stomach for 9 long months, which seemed like 9 years. And the pain she suffered and endured while giving birth to you was enough to kill the strongest of men. She breastfed you and experienced many sleepless nights because of you. She cleansed you and removed filth from your body with her right hand. She fed you before feeding herself, when hungry, so that you could eat until satisfied. She made her lap a cradle for you, and she showered you with kindness and gifts. فَإِنْ أَصَابَكَ مَرَضٌ أَوْ شِكَايَةٌ أَظْهَرَتْ مِنَ الْأَسَفِ فَوْقَ النِّهَايَةِ وَأَطَالَتْ الْحُزْنَ وَالنَّحِيبِ وبذلت مالها للطبيب ولو خيرت بين حياتك وموتها لطلبت حياتك بأعلى صوتها. If you became ill or suffered from anything, she displayed extreme grief. She wept, lamented, and wailed, and gave her last cent to the physician, desiring your health and well-being. And if she were given a choice between your life and her own death, she would have screamed for your life as loud as she could. My son, let him live and let me die. هذا وكم عاملتها بسوء الخلق مرارا فدعت لك بالتوفيق سرا وجهارا فلما احتاجت عند الكبر إليك جعلتها من أحوال الأشياء عليك فشبعت وهي جائعة ورويت وهي قانعة وقدمت عليها أهلك وأولادك بالإحسان وقابلت أيديها بالنسيان وصعب لديك أمرها وهو يسير وطال عليك عمرها وهو قصير هجرتها ومالها سواك نصير. Then after all of this, all the sacrifices, everything that she did, how often have you misbehaved and mistreated her? But she responded by praying for your success in public and behind closed doors. Then when she grew old and needed you the most, you made her the least of your priorities. You filled your gut while she went hungry. You quenched your thirst while she went without drink. You placed your wife and children before her. You felt that being a son to her was too difficult, while nothing could be easier. She lived too long in your estimation. You have some people, ya ikhwan, the mother gets sick, the mother gets old, and the son is actually praying that the mother will die.
Sisters, please, we know that the children are going to be making noise, but there's no reason why we should be hearing all this conversation by the sisters. So please be quiet and be attentive and be respectful. Jazakumullah khair.
So finally he says, هذا ومولاك قد نهاك عن التأفف وعاتبك في حقها بعتاب لطيف ستعاقب في دنياك بعقوق البنين وفي أخراك بالبعد عن رب العالمين يناديك بلسان التوبيخ والتحديد ذلك بما قدمت يداك وأن الله ليس بظلام للعبيد. All of these transgressions while your Lord has prohibited you from even saying uff. Your punishment in this world will be children who disrespect you as you disrespected her. As they say, al-jaza'u min jins al-amal. Wa kama tadinu tudan. If you disrespect your parents, Allah will give you children who will disrespect you. And in the world to come, you will be distanced and driven away from the Lord of the worlds. He will call out to you in a threatening and scolding voice. This is what your hands have sent forth. This is the punishment that you have earned for mistreating your parents. And Allah does not oppress His slaves, but it is His slaves who oppress themselves. So this is basically what we wanted to mention about the rights of the parents and stressing the importance of fulfilling their rights. And if you have any questions or comments about this lecture or the previous lecture, فَتَفَضَّلُوا بِهَا. في شيء يا إخوان؟ But we have one from I'll let you guys think about it. We have one from the sister who says, it says, my mother wants me to do something and my husband does not. So who has the greater right? There's a hadith of Aisha that she asked the Prophet ﷺ, who has the most right upon a man? So he said, Ummuhu, his mother. Then she asked him, and who has the most right upon a woman? She said, or he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, her husband. So if your mother is asking you to do something which is permissible, and your husband is asking you not to do that same thing, and what he's asking you to not do is also permissible, then the woman should obey her husband, and her mother should understand that her greater obligation is to her husband. طيب. There's another question. It says, how should we behave when parents try to invade the right of the wife and vice versa? Wallahi, I'm not really sure. I think the question needs some clarity. I would like the questioner, whoever asked this question, to provide some context or some clarity, because I don't know if I can answer it correctly the way it is. So we'll see if they'll bring a follow-up question and give some clarity, some context, because right now it's kind of vague. I'm not really sure where they're going with it. But the next one, it says, what about some parents? They have no time to teach their children to teach Quran and Salat, instead busy in taking them to other activities. Are they accountable? طيب يا إخوان, as we mentioned in the last segment, and we'll talk about it more tomorrow when we talk about the rights of children, that the father in particular and the parents in general are responsible for educating their children. If they are not able to educate them themselves, yubashirun al-amal, they themselves sit down with them and educate them, then they have to do what? They have to provide for their education. Maybe there's a program in the masjid, Sunday school. There's a tahfeed program, after school program. They would bring them to the masjid to be educated. And if there's money, if there's a fee, they would pay the fee for their children to be educated Islamically. That's their obligation. And this is derived from a number of evidences. One of them is the ayah in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُوْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَهْلِكُمْ نَارًا, protect yourselves and your families from a fire. And Ali ibn Abi Talib, when he made tafsir the ayah, he said, عَلِّمُوهُمْ وَأَدِّبُوهُمْ. He said it means teach them their religion and rectify their character by teaching them the fine morals and the good character of Islam. And also we have the hadith in which the Prophet said, كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. And he mentioned the father is a ra'in and the mother is a ra'in. That all of you are shepherds and all of you are going to be asked about your flock. The father will be asked about his children, the mother will be asked about her children, etc. So if they don't do it, if they don't teach them themselves or have them taught, they will be accountable, because the Prophet said, كُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ. All of you are going to be what? Held accountable. You're going to be brought to account. طيب ثم بعد ذلك, the question says, please can you tell youth, let me see. Please can you tell youth from there to give Isha Adhan? I think this is more an administrative thing. That basically the sisters want one of the youth to give the Isha Adhan. طيب في شيء يا إخوان. Any other questions? Any questions from the brothers or from the sisters? في شيء? Any questions? تفضل زين.
You mentioned how like one of the major problems of marital problems leads back to either not understanding each other's rights or demanding more than
What you're entitled to.
can you elaborate upon that, demanding more what you're entitled to? Like, can you give like maybe common examples of that?
طيب, so the question was that we mentioned in the previous segment that one of the main causes or one of the principal causes for discord amongst husband and wife is either one of the spouses or both of them is failing to fulfill the rights of the other, or one of them or both of them is demanding rights which they're not entitled to. So, and the brother asked if we could provide some examples of both sides. So as far as not fulfilling the rights, it would be like, for example, the woman refusing to obey her husband. The husband refusing to give maintenance to the wife, to provide for the wife. So for example, he goes out to work and he eats dinner outside. There's no food in the home. He comes home and he goes to bed. So he doesn't provide food. He's not feeding the woman. Okay? He doesn't provide her with clothes. Her clothes are what? Her clothes are shabby. Her clothes are worn out. They need to be replaced. She's been wearing the same shoes for 3 years. He buys clothes for himself, doesn't buy clothes. It's not a lack of money. It's not due to poverty. But he just doesn't do it. So this will be failing to fulfill her right. And this will cause what? Discord, because she's entitled to that. So these are two examples of how that can create discord. But from the other side, expecting something which you're not entitled to. So for example, the woman expecting the husband to, what's that? That's a good example. That basically, let's say that the sister is studying, or she works as a nurse or a teacher. So she has to have transportation back and forth. It's not her responsibility to buy her own transportation. The husband has to provide for that. So she insists that he buy what? An expensive vehicle which is beyond his means. And she says, this is my right. I have a right to what? The best transportation, the best that money can buy. And you have to basically break your back to do that. Let's say that they want to send their child to school, to university. And there are different options, and they're having to pay for it. So she says, well, you have to send him to Harvard or Yale because this is the best school. But he can't afford it. She says, well, you have to get another job. If you have to work 3 jobs, if you have to work around the clock, she's demanding now something which is beyond her right and the right of the children. So this is an example. I like to have one that's more practical. These are more like, I guess imaginary. But I think you get the point. That basically we mentioned what they're entitled to. But when people start to demand things which they're not entitled to, that's where problems come. Because if you ask me to do something which I'm not obligated to do, I'm going to what? Resist. Especially if the person on the other side is not giving me what I'm entitled to. And this is the problem of an-nas, this is the problem of people in general. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in the Quran when He says, وَيْلٌ لِلْمُطَفِّفِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا اكْتَالُوا عَلَى النَّاسِ يَسْتَوْفُونَ وَإِذَا كَالُوهُمْ أَوْ وَزَنُوهُمْ يُخْسِرُونَ. He says, woe to those mutaffifin, the stinters, the people who do what? They like to skim off the top. Then he goes on to explain who they are. Who are these people? He says, they are the ones that when they are the buyers, they want to get what they're entitled to and more. But when they're the sellers, when somebody's trying to get their right from them, they want to do what? They want to skim off the top and give less than what is due. And this is true not just in weights and measure, buying and selling, but also true in marital relationships. You have a husband who wants his right kamilan. He wants everything he's entitled to. But when it comes to the right of the wife, he wants to do what? Give her part of what she's entitled to. Vice versa. The woman wants everything 5-star. Everything 5-star. She wants, I want the best of the best. But then when it comes to her husband's right, she wants to what? Give him 1 star. Nah, it doesn't work like that. It has to be what? 5-star, 5-star. 3-star, 3-star. It has to be equal. So does that help a little bit? A little bit. Barakallahu feek. في شيء يا أخوان? Any other questions, comments, complaints? Going once. Going twice.
This is just probably off the subject slightly. What is the ruling on adoption in Islam? I know they cannot have your last name. But is it something recommended? I just heard recently that Islam does not favor adoption. Is that true?
Yeah, it's prohibited. It's prohibited in the Quran. Tabanni.
Didn't the Prophet Muhammad had Zayd?
So he did that. It was a practice. It was practiced in Jahiliyyah, and the Prophet did it according to the practice of Jahiliyyah. And then after that, He prohibited it. So when Allah prohibited it in the Quran, the Prophet did what? He stopped calling him Zayd ibn Muhammad, and he stopped referring to him as his son. So yeah, the Prophet did do it according to the practice of Jahiliyyah, and he did adopt him, and he did actually take his name, Zayd ibn Muhammad. But then when that was later abrogated in the Quran, the Prophet left it. And it was done in such a way to not only prohibit adoption, but to really stamp out the concept of a child who is not your biological child having the same rights as a biological child. So if we look at the qissa, the whole story, before it was prohibited, the Prophet adopted Zayd, and he called him Zayd ibn Muhammad, just like the people of Jahiliyyah. And all the people used to call him Zayd ibn Muhammad. He was considered like his own son. And Zaynab bin Jahash, who was from one of the important and highly respected clans of Quraysh, he actually married her to Zayd. But now you have to think that Zayd previously, before being adopted by the Prophet, had been a slave. So now you have this woman who's min al-ashraf, from the very noble and high status and high class, being married to what? A slave. And obviously the Prophet had a wisdom behind that. Okay? But it didn't work. It wasn't working. And it was Allah's will that it would work. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed that the Prophet was supposed to marry Zaynab. That Zayd would divorce Zaynab and then the Prophet would marry Zaynab. Now think about this. If Zayd is his real son and has the right of the real son, can he marry his wife, his ex-wife? No. So Allah ordered him to do what? To marry his ex-wife. And then prohibited a tabanni. And then he ordered him to marry to what? To really put a stamp on it. That this tabanni, this adoption, is not like the biological relationship. And it doesn't have the same hurma. And it doesn't lead to the same prohibitions. And the proof is what? What stamps it is that the Prophet married the ex-wife of Zayd. So we don't have the concept in Islam of a tabanni, of adoption. But we do have the concept of fostering. Fostering meaning that you take a child who's not your own and they live with you. They come into your care and custody and you take care of them like your own child. But the rights and the entitlements of father and son are not there. They don't take your name. They don't inherit from you. You don't inherit from them. So like these rights and other rights which come with biological relationship do not come with fostering.
That's okay. That's permissible.
Yeah, fostering is permissible, but adoption is not. Adoption means I become basically the parent of this person and I have all the rights of a parent and they have all the entitlements of a child. Yeah, that's what adoption means. And you're negating, if you look, even in this country, when they adopt, you're negating any right of the biological parents. They don't have any right to custody, they don't have a right to inheritance, they don't have a right to anything. And that's what Islam does not want. It doesn't want the tie of lineage and the effects of the biological relationship to be what? To be severed and then attached to someone who's not biologically related to that child. That's what's prohibited. Yeah. But fostering is...
Right now we have millions of kids all over the Muslim world
in
orphanages because of the wars. And
right.
Like that. And when I was talking to somebody about why, adopting, they said, no, in Islam is forbidden.
But you can foster.
Foster, okay. What about the hurma? So when you bring a boy to the house, is your wife supposed to cover from that?
Yeah, see, that will be the problem. Is that if you foster a boy, yeah, I mean, if you foster a child who's not your own, then there's going to be some issues in the home. There's going to be some issues in the home, some difficulties that people have to be willing to bear. Because, that child isn't yours. And there's nothing stopping that child, should you and your wife separate, asamahallah, from marrying your wife. So then there has to be what? Hijab, etc. Also between the children, the youngsters, there would have to be what? Hijab. That your daughters and this fostered son, so you'd have to be very careful. It's something people have to consider. But even adoption wouldn't change that. As we see from the qissa, the story of Zayd. Yeah. طيب في شيء يا اخوان تفضل يا شيخنا.
What about changing the last name of the wife?
ايه No, we don't do that in Islam. And basically what that came from, if you go back to the actual practice when it started amongst the Christians, is because they viewed the wife like mata'. They viewed her like property. So when the husband would take her as a wife, she became what? She took his name because she was like his property. The same thing if he took a slave. That slave would take his name because that slave is his property. So obviously Islam does not look at the woman like property, so she maintains her own name, her own identity. No, because even if she wanted to change it willfully, we would say no, because as we mentioned yesterday, this is not the practice of the Muslims. So if she does that, she's imitating the non-Muslims, and that's totally prohibited in Islam. She'd be imitating the non-Muslims, the practice of the non-Muslims. طيب في شيء يا إخوان, anything else? There was another one? Really? I got you. طيب. It says, why is organ donation not allowed in Islam? But first of all, the scholars of Islam differ about organ donation. They differ about it. But perhaps the strongest opinion is that it's not permitted. It's not permitted to donate your organs. And perhaps the greatest reason the scholars use is that your body is not yours to do anything with. And the body has what? Huquq. It has rights and it has hurumat. It has, basically sanctity. And it's not proper for someone after you die to do what? To violate that sanctity. So without your permission, they take your organs. Or you give permission as if these organs belong to you. They don't belong to you. This body belongs to God. It's just like, why doesn't Islam allow us to drink alcohol? Because alcohol is harmful. And one of the things you have to think, ya ikhwan, when the Sharia came to preserve 6 things. And one of those things is what? An-nafs. So we're not supposed to do anything to harm our nafs. So you can't say, well, I hate my life is terrible, it's awful, I just want to end it. I'm going to take my own life, as if your life belongs to you. I'm going to stab myself, as if your body is yours to do what? To violate. Allah says, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ, and do not kill yourselves. Why? Because yourselves don't belong to you. You don't have a right to kill yourselves. So basically, I think this is the argument of the scholars who say that organ donation is not permissible, although there is difference of opinion amongst the scholars. And as always, we have to remember also the concept of what? الضرورة تبيح المحظورات. That extreme need and necessity will make what would normally be prohibited permissible. So there may be life and death situations, there may be certain circumstances where it's allowed. So when the scholars say it's not permissible, some people, they automatically assume these scholars are what? They're living in a different world. They're out of touch with society. No, they're not out of touch. They're talking about what? The general ruling. Understand that there may be certain circumstances where this prohibited thing will be permitted. They haven't forgotten the concept of what? Of darura, extreme necessity. But they're saying under normal circumstances, people should not be what? Donating their organs. واضح؟ طيب. Anything else يا إخوان في شيء؟ تفضل. About the subject of parents? In English or Arabic? English. Man, I have to think about that. Ask me tomorrow. Urdu, khalas. English, Arabic, and Urdu tomorrow, inshallah. Inshallah. Huh? Really, they have that too? All right, we'll do our best, ya Sheikh. We'll do our best. We'll do our best. Hey. A lot of things out there. Khalas, I'll try to think about it tonight and bring something tomorrow, inshallah. Bring some books. Atfadal ya Sheikh. Arafat. Aha. Are you allowed to get married? I understand.
But you don't need their permission.
Nah, you don't need permission. I mean, should have wrote it down. Now you're in trouble now. They're going to tell on you, man. Hey, just a question. طيب, I mean, طيب, there's no, again, There's no evidence whatsoever that a man has to inform his wife if he got married. Fadlan. And even more so, he doesn't have to ask her permission. She doesn't have the right to prohibit him. What's that? No, it's not about ajr. But what I would say is that it's probably not from al-hikmah. It's not from wisdom to do without informing her. Because it's just going to create what? You're going to create a lot of what? A lot of problems and grief for yourself. And maybe for your whole family if you have children, etc. So the best thing is, if he's going to embark on something like what you said, is that he needs to basically, make it clear what he's going to do. He has to, be a man about it and not be a coward. I mean, that's basically the best thing. But if you talk about permissible, is it permissible? Yeah, it's permissible. He doesn't have to seek her permission or let her know, inform her. Hey. The next question that comes, how much education do you have in Islamic studies? I don't know. I mean, I think now my credentials are being in question, but basically well, what I'll say is that I spent about 7 years in the kingdom studying Arabic and Islamic studies, and my specialty is in Usool Deen. And Usool Deen is basically it's a three-pronged speciality. So the first prong is al-aqidah. It's basically the Islamic belief system, what Muslims are supposed to believe, and we study that in depth. And then the second prong is al-Quran wa ulumuh, the Quran and its sciences. So we study all the Quranic sciences. And that includes a tafsir, it includes tajweed, it includes the history of the Quran, its collection, and how the Quran is used for rulings, etc. It also includes al-qira'at, the different modes of recitation, and al-qurra, the reciters themselves. And as for the last prong is a sunnah wa ulumuha, which is the Prophet's traditions and all of the sciences that are related to those traditions. And that includes the science of seerah, the Prophet's biography. It includes the science of hadith. It includes the ilm of ar-rijal, the study of the men, the narrators of the hadith. It also includes at-takhrij. How do you extract the hadith and research them? And finally, al-hukm al-hadith. Basically, how do you judge a hadith to be sahih or da'if or in between? So that's my education. I hope that's sufficient to qualify me to give this series of lectures, because I think, I don't know what the motive was for that, but that's my education in a nutshell. And obviously, I also sat while I was in the kingdom with many of the leading scholars of the kingdom, among them Salih al-Fawzan, and Abdallah Al-Ansari, who passed away, rahimahullah ta'ala, also the Mufti of the Mamlaka, and some of the other scholars and students of knowledge of the kingdom. When I was here, I was also taught by Abdullah Al-Fawzan, who used to teach me in the Ma'had in Virginia. And so these are my teachers, and I hope, inshallah ta'ala, that answers the sister's question. Fi shay ya ikhwan, anything else? Going once? Going twice? One last one. Mm-hmm.
Which effect or which haram thing strikes you most urgent that needs to be
Most urgent from the children's side?
children or youth?
Or youth. Like, ask me that one tomorrow, because we're going to talk a lot about youth and the rights of the youth, and we're going to touch on some of that stuff. So ask me that one tomorrow, inshallah. We're going to deal with the lecture tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, so with that, it's late. You guys want to pray and go home? Because you have to get up for Fajr in the masjid tomorrow. I know that's why you want to go home. So we're going to let you. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.